You know, if there's one single measurement that every single HVAC tech absolutely has to master, it's superheat. Seriously, it's not just some random number on your gauges, it is the most important reading you can take to protect the heart of any cooling system. So let's break this thing down and make it crystal clear.
And hey, check this out. This is a real question I saw from an apprentice online, and it's a fantastic question. If you've ever felt just a little bit fuzzy on what superheat actually is, trust me, you are not alone. It's a common hurdle, but by the end of this, I promise you are gonna get it.
All right, to really get this, we're going to use a simple analogy that just takes all the mystery out of the whole thing. So forget about refrigerant and complex charts for just a minute. I want you to picture a simple pot of water on a stove.
Okay, so here's the official kinda textbook definition. Superheat is sensible heat, and that's just a fancy way of saying it's heat you can actually feel and measure with a thermometer. But here's the absolute key. This heat only gets added to a vapor after all the liquid has completely boiled away. That's the crucial part.
Now, let's connect that technical definition to something we've all done a million times. You're making spaghetti, right? You put a pot of water on the stove. You crank up the heat. This is where the magic really happens.
So look, it happens in 3 distinct stages. First, you heat that water up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. That's its boiling point or its saturation point. Now, no matter how much you crank that burner, as long as it's liquid, it will not get any hotter. All that extra energy, that extra heat, is now going into turning the 212-degree water into 212 degrees steam. See that? The temperature didn't change. That hidden energy is called latent heat. And only when every last drop of water has become steam, can the steam itself actually start to get hotter. That final temperature climb is superheat.
And boom, there it is. That right there is the whole concept. That 10-degree difference between the steam's actual temperature, 222, and the temperature it boiled at, 212. That difference is your superheat. It's just a simple measurement of how much warmer a vapor is than its boiling point. That's all it is.
So we know what superheat is, but why do we care so much? Who cares? Well, you should, because this one number is pretty much all that stands between a perfectly healthy system and a completely destroyed compressor.
This right here, this is the whole reason we even talk about superheat. It's a fundamental law of physics. You can't squeeze a liquid. I mean, you can try, but something is going to break. And in an AC system, that something is almost always the very expensive compressor. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This quote from a seasoned tech says it all perfectly. Yeah, we can use superheat for diagnostics and all that, but its number one job, its whole reason for being, is to act as a bodyguard for the compressor.
Exactly. The best way to think about superheat is like an insurance policy. Any superheat reading above 0 is your proof, your guarantee that all the liquid refrigerant has successfully boiled off inside the evaporator. It gives you a safety buffer, making sure that only pure vapor gets back to the compressor and prevents what's known as liquid slugging, which is, well, it's a catastrophic failure that can kill a compressor instantly.
Okay, so we've got the what and the why down cold. Now for the fun part. Let's get our hands dirty with the how. Measuring superheat out in the field is actually a really simple 3-step process.
It really is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Step 1, clamp a good thermometer to the suction line. That's going to give you the actual temperature of the refrigerant vapor. Step 2, hook up your low side gauge. That gives you the suction pressure. And for any given refrigerant, that pressure corresponds to a very specific boiling point. We call that the saturation temperature. You find it by looking up the pressure on a pressure temperature chart, your good old PT chart. And finally, step 3, you just do the simple math. Actual line temp minus the saturation temp equals your superheat.
And here it is with some real numbers. Let's say your thermometer reads 55 degrees on that suction line. Then you look at your gauges, and the pressure tells you the refrigerant is boiling at 45 degrees. Well, you just subtract. 55 minus 45 gives you 10 degrees of superheat. That's it. That's your number. That's your safety net.
Now here's where it gets really interesting, because that number isn't just about safety. It's a diagnostic tool. It's telling you a story about what's really happening deep inside that evaporator coil. So let's learn how to read that story.
Yeah, that superheat reading is basically telling you how efficiently that evaporator is doing its job. Are we boiling off all the liquid refrigerant way too early in the coil, or is it happening dangerously late? It gives us this incredible insight into how the metering device is performing and the overall health of the system's charge.
And this breaks it down into the 2 main clues you're going to see. On one side, you've got high superheat.
This usually means the evaporator is starving. All the liquid boils off way too early, and then the vapor just keeps picking up extra, useless heat. On the other side, you've got low superheat, and this is the dangerous one. This means liquid is getting perilously close to escaping the evaporator and heading right for your compressor.
So let's just boil this all down. High superheat, you're safe from liquid slugging, but you're inefficient. You're not using the whole evaporator coil to actually cool the air. Low superheat, well, you're running very efficiently, but you are living on the edge, risking total compressor failure. The whole game is finding that perfect balance, that sweet spot that gives you both safety and performance.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. Mastering superheat is a massive step forward for any tech, but you always got to remember it's one critical piece of a much larger puzzle. A weird superheat reading isn't the final answer, it's your first clue. It's the reason you start digging deeper, looking at subcooling, pressures, and airflow to truly understand what that system is trying to tell you.